Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Bobby. Guys, a science video today. Yes, a science video on this channel here. It's very untypical. However, this is truly a very important message, especially in this modern day and age. The modernist, the Western view on Islam is always, Islam, they're so backwards, Stone Age religion, those are cavemen, super misogynistic, of course. They're suppressing women. They don't want women to have multiple boyfriends. They want women to be virgins when they enter into marriage. All of this comes from misogyny, all of this comes from hatred, from a patriarchy, from bigotry, etc., you name it. They seem not to want to see the wisdom in entering into a marriage as a virgin. Moreover, I would make the claim that in this modernist society, it is simply seen as a social construct. Basically, yeah, well, if it works for you to be a virgin, okay, I guess, but ultimately, you do you and I do me. Whatever feels right to you, you can do. Whatever feels right to me, I want to do, and therefore please stop with your bigotry. Let me express myself. Let me make my own lessons in this world. However, Islam came to prevent certain pitfalls of humanity. I'm going to give you an example as I always do. If I preach healthy nutrition on this channel, I tell you, hey guys, the best is to eat steaks, to eat animal foods, organs, raw milk. This is really the best way to go. Now you can scream at me and tell me, oh, you're so bigoted, you are an animal abuser, let me eat what I want to eat and you eat what you want to eat. Yes, obviously, in the end, I'm gonna eat what I want to eat and you're gonna eat what you want to eat. I'm gonna do what I want to do and you're gonna do what you want to do, of course. However, I like to give some education here on this channel, and therefore I propose that there is a superior diet indeed. And now you can choose to follow that diet, follow that guidance, or you can choose to eat hamburgers every day or soy schnitzel for all I care. I really don't care ultimately. Of course, I want the best for humans, but in the end, do what you want to do. And now, when it comes down to Islam, when it comes down to traditional religion in principle, all traditional religions proclaimed that you should enter into marriage as a virgin, males and females alike, but it is heavily stressed on the female, of course. And in today's video, I want to show you a few studies and talk a little bit about the pitfalls of losing your virginity prior to marriage. We're going to start with this little graph here in the background. This is a study that has been conducted over 26 years indeed, and here you can see relationships between sexual history and marital satisfaction. So the yellow line is males and the blue line is females, men and women here. And you can see that the marital satisfaction, so the happiness within marriage, in both instances, males and females alike, is the strongest if both had only one partner. For males it's even higher, and this ties into the nature of men, of course, because men are protectors and providers and they truly want to protect something that is precious to them, i.e. a virgin in this case. Women are hypergamous in nature, they're dating up, they always will compare to some extent, so therefore even from the get-go the woman is slightly less happy than the male is, but nevertheless the peak in both instances for both genders is with one partner, but then you can see a rapid decrease in both sexes. However, what is very interesting to see here is that once men had 6 to 10 sexual partners, all of a sudden you see a slight increase with marital satisfaction again, which is of course at first kind of funny, but if you take male nature into account, and males are polygynous, which means we can marry multiple women and it would co-align with our nature. This is where you can see here that they are experiencing a happiness with 6 to 10 sex partners. However, for women, this is where it radically drops. And I think this paints such a beautiful picture because you can see that males and females are polar opposites, of course, in that regard. Anyways, the point being is, in both sexes, however, ultimately there is a decrease with more and more and more sex partners. For males and females alike, at the threshold of around about 20 sex partners, it kind of levels out again, because this is basically when you are just numb. And now we come to the biology of the female here. Females, in opposition to males, secrete oxytocin when they have sex. Oxytocin is a happiness hormone, but it is a binding hormone as well. Matter of fact, the mother, when she breastfeeds her child, secretes oxytocin, and with this they are bonding, not pair bonding, but they're bonding, of course, in a nurturing way between mother and offspring. Males, on the other hand, when they have sex, they're not really secreting oxytocin. They're secreting dopamine, serotonin, happiness hormones, hormones that are associated with power, with strength, with increased vitality, etc. However, as I stated, the female secretes oxytocin, and especially that concentration is found within the saliva of the female. And therefore, when the female starts kissing the male, the woman starts kissing the man, then she's trying subconsciously on a biological level to bind that man to her. This is her responsibility, to bind that man to her. However, in this modern day and age, as we stated already, many women and men are promiscuous, and therefore many women, they are attempting biologically, subconsciously, without even knowing, to bind the man to them, but then the man ditches them, or they ditch the man, and then they move on to the next sexual partner. And then the cycle repeats over and over again, and after a while, women lose pair bonding capacity. For that, you can find a study in the description box as well. I'm going to link all the studies that I'm mentioning here: oxytocin and social relationships, from attachment to bond disruption. This speaks briefly about it. My point here being is, as I stated already, that every time women secrete oxytocin to bind a man to them and they fail to do so, after a while we find lower oxytocin levels within them, and therefore they physically, biologically already, let alone spiritually, are not able to truly bond to a male anymore. So here we have a very interesting study conducted in depth. The abstract reads: premarital sex predicts divorce, but we do not know why. Very, very strange, of course. So anyways, here they did a study with multiple factors indeed. So if you scroll down, you can see that they measured total male and female lifetime, vaginal, oral, and even anal sexual partners, reports on concurrent sexual partners. They married different religions, as you can see here: no religion, sectarian, Catholic, etc., etc. They took all of this into account. They took race into account, gender, female, male, white, black, Hispanic, and whatnot, when the first marriage occurred, etc., etc. So basically what they're doing here is they're taking everything into account that they can, and then they found out that with increased sexual partners, the risk for divorce heightened. And we're going to see this in this graph here. So here in this graph, it is somewhat summed up. Women who have more non-marital sexual partners prior to marriage are less likely to have stable marriages. So as you can see here, 0 sexual partners entering into the marriage as a virgin. Highly likely chances of maintaining that marriage. The chances are 80% roughly. However, if that woman had only 1 sexual partner prior to the marriage, the chances drop down already, and now we are roughly at 50%. Another sexual partner, you're at 40%, and then, and this is pretty dramatic of course, at roughly 5 sexual partners prior to marriage, the chances of a happy marriage drop down to only 29%, which means with a chance of 71% roughly, you're gonna get divorced. And then of course it further increases. This is just one graph, and there are multiple graphs on this. The last study that I actually read stated that after roughly 5 to 8 sexual partners, the chance of divorce increased up to 83%, right? So take those numbers with a grain of salt, of course, but you can understand the trend here, surely, that after only 1 sexual partner, only 1 attempt of promiscuity prior to marriage, you see a strong decrease in happy marriages. And those studies, even though on males and females conducted alike, they always find the same reoccurring theme here, that when women engage in promiscuous sex, when women lose their virginity, this is actually what leads to failed marriages. When it comes down to men, there is an impact, as I stated already. Ideally, both enter as virgins into the marriage. However, the real disruptive effects always happen when women are promiscuous. And this here is another very, very shocking find. previous sex partners and women reproduction, we read, did you know that a woman's previous sex partners can impact a woman's offspring? Yes, you heard it right. Recent research has confirmed this, although this theory dates back to ancient Greece, where it was an accepted fact. However, genetics theory in the 20th century disregarded this until now. Recently, scientists at the University of New South Wales discovered a new form of non-genetic inheritance and have shown for the first time that physical traits of previous sex partners can be passed on to future children. Yuck. According to the researchers, the effect is because molecules in the seminal fluid of the first male mate are absorbed by the immature eggs of the female, which then influences the development of the second male's offspring. Yes, the lead study author, Angela Green, was quoted in saying, "Our discovery complicates our entire view of how variation is transmitted across generations. It also opens exciting new possibilities and avenues of research." Yeah, very exciting. We found that even though the second male sired the offspring size was determined by what the mother's previous mating partner ate as a maggot. So this obviously in animal studies. However, they go into human studies as well. And here you can see that 63% of the females, 37 of 59, tested harbored male microchimerism and in many parts of the brain. So microchimerism, ultimately to dumb this down, those are strings of DNA, of male DNA, found in the brain of the woman. So they become part of the woman. And at first, researchers and scientists, they believed that this comes from previous pregnancies in instances where women potentially aborted a fetus and therefore the male DNA stayed within their brain. They assumed that this must come from the male fetus that then has been aborted. But matter of fact, this has been debunked since then, and they found out that this has nothing to do with previous pregnancies, but it has to do with previous sexual partners. So women that had sex with men and those men ejaculated into those women, the DNA that is found within the semen is stored within the female's brain and then can impact the offspring of their husbands. And now if you tie all of this together, we spoke about pair bonding abilities in women, that they decrease in their ability to bond to their men after having sex with multiple partners. And then you take into that they potentially can even alter your offspring when they had sex with multiple males. Moreover, the happiness within the marriage will be decreased from the get-go as well. Yeah, maybe Islam has a point after all. Maybe traditional religions have a point after all. And if you don't care about all of this because you're, I don't know, an egocentrical maniac, then look into this. People who experience parental divorce as children have lower love hormone levels than those who did not. So this is a little study conducted here as well, which is quite telling and very interesting. I'm going to sum this up for you too. They, matter of fact, found out that no matter at which age the parents got divorced, no matter what age that kid was then, in adulthood they found decreased oxytocin levels. So yet again, the happiness, the love, the bonding hormone in those children. Up to 80% decrease. And now if we think about the statistics, we're talking about, in the modern day and age, a 50% divorce rate. So every second family ends up in divorce, which means half of the population, potentially even more, depending on how many kids they had, are children of divorce, and therefore they run around with an already impaired pair bonding, happiness, love, hormone ability. And again, if you're a total egomaniac, then it potentially doesn't matter to you. But think about society. That means that more than half of the society is already biochemically messed up. And therefore they keep on messing up, of course. You have a majority of people in the society already being messed up. And then they give that further to their children and they enter divorce again. They repeat the mistakes of their parents because they simply cannot help themselves because they're already biochemically altered. So this is all very, very telling and very, very dangerous, of course, for our society, for us humans. Do we really want to live in such a world, or do we want to use preventative measures? And no, I'm not talking about safe sex here. I'm talking about actual Islamic, or at least traditional religious marriages that enter into marriage as virgins and maintain that. So they build strong, happy offspring. The choice is yours. Alright guys, and this is it for today's video. If you liked it, leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out the links in the description box below to further support my work. Check out my new ebook where I talk about my journey from the West, from liberalism, New Ageism into Islam. Check it out in the description box below. And as always, may God bless you all. Much love and peace.
يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي